Butterflies. That was the feeling. On top of nerves and anticipation for the signal, you had this fluttering feeling in the pit of your stomach ever since you were assigned to your post for this joint sting operation. The pre-meeting went well between Fourth Kind and Fat Gum's agency, but the memory of your first introductions to the key players in the operation looped in your head on repeat. You could feel the heat in your cheeks when you glanced at Kirishima next to you, his eyes trained on the entrance to the dealer's den. It felt embarrassing.
"How long do you reckon they're going to be?"
asked Kirishima, snapping you out of your embarrassment. You almost squeaked when he spoke. Oh, well, depends how the exchange will go, I guess. You motioned, holding onto your arm to comfort yourself from what jitters you still had coursing through your body.
"It's just been a while now,"
Kirishima continued.
"I don't like it."
You watched at how intense his stare was, as if it could see through the walls of the den. It was that kind of intensity that you admired from the pro-hero Red Riot. It didn't help your case when Fourth Kind had dropped on you, on the day that a meeting was held for this sting operation, and that you were part of the first wave. It came as a surprise that this group only consisted of 2 members, yourself and Red Riot. "I'm not going to go against any orders though," you replied cautiously. "Until the signal, we can't move." Kirishima grumbled under his breath, finally taking his eyes off from the entrance and sitting back against the wall of the alleyway, adjacent to the den. You peered past the dumpster, seeing nothing of significance before you joined Kirishima, albeit keeping a small distance away from him. Every now and then you caught yourself looking his way, catching his eyes, his arms, his chest. Well, it felt that way for the past 20 minutes. Whether Fourth Kind was oblivious or not, it felt that he planned this all along, especially after how you introduced yourself to Kirishima yesterday.
"Hey, how is Fourth Kind's agency?"
asked Kirishima, bringing your attention back to his sharp, red eyes. "It's pretty good," you simply replied. "I'm just happy after my internship he still allowed me to patrol. Otherwise I'd be having a desk job."
"Why's that?"
Kirishima's curiosity piqued at the nature of your work. You figured with his small stint in the agency during his early internship years that he wouldn't know in detail the ins and outs of Fourth Kind's agency. Thought of that made you grimace. You almost sounded like a fan. Fourth Kind works for the government, so you could only imagine the amount of paperwork that passes through on a local level, you explained with a wry smile. But thankfully, apparently, I've proven myself enough to be useful on the street, but that only made me a prime target for Fourth Kind's primary example.
Right. So you're the exemplary employee.
For the community, in and out of the office. The grimace returned on your lips as their corners pulled against your cheek. For years after interning, there were times when you wondered why you still stayed under the agency's employ. The rewards for being Fourth Kind's example of his ethics, morals, and his strict regimen on the streets proved to be significant despite the hard, long hours, whether on your feet or at a desk. It really didn't matter. However, the respect that you've earned was gratifying. Most of the public knew of your hero name, and truth be told, you were happy the younger generation, especially the children, took to the name with a smile and a laugh. It was what you were going for when you came up with it back in your school years.
Whoa, man! That's so manly!
Replied Kirishima, earning a confused and yet surprised look from you.
I remember when he used to hit Tetsu Tetsu and I over our heads constantly for any oversights. Don't tell me he still does that.
A nervous chuckle bubbled from your throat, concluding Kirishima's query, before a crash caught both of your attention. Peering past the dumpster the both of you hid behind, you spotted nothing of interest, except for a black cat running away from a fallen trash can beside the den. The both of you sighed together while the tense sensation of your muscles relaxed. Not the signal that the both of you were waiting for, but one couldn't be too sure at this point. Until the cat approached the both of you from across the road. Curious, you stepped out from behind the dumpster, kneeling towards the little creature who mewed up at you. Kirishima, curious yet confused, followed in your stead, the both of you noticing a collar on the little creature. Well, aren't you cute? You mused before you watched Kirishima reach out for the cat's collar, reading the brass that it adorned as well as taking a small note from it. "Storm now," the note read.
We gotta go,
responded Kirishima, standing on his feet and heading straight for the front doors. You quickly pet the cat, a little rough than it liked, before you took to your feet. "Thanks, Toka," you spoke, your feet immediately taking flight behind Kirishima.
First wave initiated,
informed Kirishima over his earpiece.
See you inside.
You heard the message loud and clear in your own. After the meeting, Fat Gum and Fourth Kind agreed that Kirishima, that is Red Riot, should lead the charge with you in tow to assist. At the time, it was so much to take in, having only met the pro hero for the first time in person on this mission. But now, here you were, riding alongside him, storming a dealer's den in the middle of Esuha City. Kirishima bursted through the front door, unknowingly pushing aside two men who were standing there unaware of the storm. You followed, eyeing both of the men out cold simply from the force of Kirishima. Not only was this a job to fulfill, but you took it as a learning experience, watching the bare back of Kirishima before you through the dark, dimly lit, narrow hallway. You noticed that the den was a karaoke bar, littered with a myriad of doors and coloured in fluorescent light, while a number of men ran through the hall towards Kirishima in single file. The sound of Kirishima's quirk hardened his arms against the number of assailants with weapons, throwing them into the wall, through the doors, and over his head. You continued to follow, ensuring that any of the men that passed by Kirishima were the ones you took care of. With a fling of a knife, one man rushed towards Kirishima, only to swipe the blade against his already hardened arms and slip past him. You quickly slid past the assailant, utilizing the momentum he had gained in his offense before punching a few points on his body, the reverberation of your finely tuned quirk rippling through him before you rendered him immovable to harm anyone else. This went on for some time. Kirishima bulldozed through while you took care of the scraps. Finally, the end of the tunnel was near before Kirishima rammed into a large man by the end of the hallway, smashing him through a set of wooden double doors. Entering the room, you found yourself surrounded by more thugs and brutes, waving around all sorts of weaponry in hand, including a large, tall man. taller than all of them, swinging around a large hammer. That butterfly feeling earlier? It was starting to sink.
I don't see the agent anywhere.
You spoke in a low tone next to Kirishima.
We gotta take these guys out first,
He instructed, his arms hardening further into his shoulders and chest. It was the signal they needed. The men immediately rushed towards the both of you all at once, raising their weapons amongst the cacophonous battle cry. It was now or never. The both of you charged towards them, Kirishima to the right, you to the left. With brute strength alone, Kirishima smashed into the men, using his body as a shield against the weapons that swung at him. Meanwhile, you maneuvered through them, swinging your limbs with enough force, momentum, and speed to push them away, each swing followed by a deep and thunderous boom. The sound caused many of the men to cover their ears. Speed was key for your quirk. The faster you whipped your limbs, the stronger your quirk activated, rendering the men temporarily deaf or unable to shake from the strength of your aftershock. The fight began to shrink to a manageable size, before both Kirishima and yourself were squarely back to back with each other, holding off the barrage of men that still charged recklessly at the two of you.
Good to see your quirk in action,
commented Kirishima while the both of you weaved together, moving circularly around each other.
Oh, yeah!
You breathed, whipping your arm at a speed to cause the sound of thunder boom towards a set of 3.
Yeah, I only ever mentioned it, huh?
Oh, so that's what you meant by Mark,
spoke Kirishima while he kicked a man square in the gut, knocking the wind out of him.
So, how fast?
Yeah. If I concentrate and am not being overwhelmed by a group of strangers, probably Mach 1?
What?
Exclaimed Kirishima, holding off another thug with his arms pushing against the glint of a large katana.
That's faster than Ingenium. Ugh.
It's faster than Hawks, but I can't sustain it.
You explained, swinging one of your legs towards another group of men, the force of your kick sending another resounding boom in the air.
Right now, I'm nowhere near.
The battle continued, blow after blow. Kirishima and yourself fought off each able man, swapping places every so often to compensate and protect each other. It felt seamless the way you moved between one another, taking out each one of the thugs in tow, until they were all knocked out and unable to move. The both of you heaved while you leaned against each other's backs to keep yourselves propped on your feet. You pressed into him, the heat of his body a comfort to yours, while you saw the steam escape your mouth and off your skin. You felt your joints stiffen as your body began to cool, trying your best to keep them pliable. This was the drawback. The sound of something metallic scraping against the dirt floor caught Kirishima's ear, turning to see the large brute drag his sledgehammer against the grain of the floor. Kirishima immediately reacted to the sudden swing, pushing you away from him before he hardened, the force of the sledgehammer's swing crushing into his arms. You tumbled across the floor from his push, propping yourself while your hands and feet scraped against the floor tiles. You shook your head, looking back at the scene before you. Kirishima's arms bled from the blunt force of the sledgehammer, his hardened skin still pushing against the strength of the brute before he heaved his body against the large weapon. The glint of its metallic head caught your eye when Kirishima rushed with his bleeding forearms, punching the brute in his gut and sending him flying a distance away. This did not deter him. The brute's feet stopping him in his tracks. The smoke and dust settled, your eyes trailing towards the brute before the swing of his sledgehammer broke through, catching Kirishima off guard. The next thing you witnessed was his body fly towards one of the walls, smashing him into the plaster. He stood there, unmoving, his body trapped within the broken plaster and brick. You forced your joints to move, your mind mentally cursing through the stiff pain before you swung your legs on the ground, the momentum of its swing hitting its peak before a blast traveled towards the brute's legs. That only made him angrier. The brute bellowed while he swung his sledgehammer towards you from above, the head of it smashing into the floor, cracking the tiles while you rolled away. Swiftly standing to your feet, you swung your limbs, your arms and legs twirling in the air. With every swing, you sent wave after wave, pummeling into the brute's body as best as possible to keep him from making a move. Yet your lungs began to burn. Your joints slowly stiffened over time. The steam breathing out from your mouth in voluminous plumes. You just needed more time. The sound of the sledgehammer headed your way, dodging the large weapon before you felt your body just graze against its cold surface. The momentum of its swing brought you to your knees, your body flying in the air before it crashed against the floor. Your arms bled from the intense scraping against the broken tiles, the sting of it surging through your body, before the hammer rose above the brute's head, ready for another drive. Suddenly, the hardened body of Kirishima rammed into the brute's side. The large man lost his balance, dropping his hammer mid-swing. You rolled away again on the floor, evading the large weapon as it crashed into the tiles. Kirishima gritted his teeth, pulling back his arms to smash into the brute, only for him to be sent back to the wall again. The rattle of chains caught your ear, watching as the brute, though no longer holding the hilt of the sledgehammer, grabbed its attached chain, whipping it across the tiles to send the hammer flying towards Kirishima. As if time stood still, you forced your joints to move, pushing your legs against the tiled floor with a thunderous sonic boom. With every hop, your feet stomped on the tiles with a deep bass tone before you reached between the hammer's trajectory and Kirishima. Your job was to give support to Red Riot, your body hovering in mid-air before you relaxed your joints, pressurized the steam from your body, and spun. The roaring sonic blast from your body exploded into the hammer and the brute, the radius of the blast smashing into his body, sending him flying through a few pillars in the room. He crashed into the opposite wall, his hammer crushing next to him. In that amount of time, you landed low, your body heaving from the pressure and the velocity to achieve a blast of that magnitude. Your arms shook as they still propped you from the floor, before you heard the sound of the rooftop crumbling above. Too weak to move, you felt something grab your ankle and drag you away from the falling debris. Your body lifted from the ground, finding yourself in the arms of Red Riot, mid-run, through the cave-in, dodging and evading pieces of concrete only to evaluate the inevitable. He knew he wouldn't make it out of the den. Running towards the corner of the room, he immediately dropped you to your feet before he pushed his quirk to his most infamous limit. His face, his body, and his limbs turning into solid stone before he hovered over you. The amount of debris that smashed into his back was staggering, but it shielded you from any harm while it continued to pile, growing dark. As soon as the sound of crumbling stone and concrete ceased, you reached for your phone, switching the flashlight on inside with a shaking hand. The light bounced from Kirishima's face, emphasizing on each piece of his skin of stone. This was a first, to see this form up close. There had been images in the media, only glimpses of it. But to witness this in front of you...
Are you alright?
He asked, his jagged teeth moving slowly while he spoke.
Yeah.
You slowly replied while you tried to cease the twitching of your arms. Kirishima looked around him, feeling the debris behind him shift while he did, slowly taking a few steps forward towards you. The broken concrete and stones settled into shape, allowing him to relieve himself, slowly returning to his normal state. You pressed yourself against the corner behind you, noticing how close he moved while he settled into the trapped space. He breathed, heavy, the heat of it washing past your skin before he smiled up at you, his arms still leaning against the wall, trapping you within them.
I'm glad,
he commented, giving his toothy grin before he spotted the shaking light in your hands. With one arm, he gently held onto your wrist, helping you to cease these aftershock tremors, if only a little.
Can you call for backup?
You nodded, reaching up to your earpiece slowly while you felt the stiffness return tenfold.
Fourth kind, first wave trapped, require assistance.
Your hands still shook. It was difficult to move. However, Kirishima's warm hand on your wrist settled the tremors that surged through your limb, at least on that limb exclusively. You continued to press yourself against the cold corner before Kirishima raised both his arms back above your head again, keeping the debris from collapsing around him.
We make a pretty good team, huh?
He asked with a soft smirk on his face.
I wouldn't mind learning more about how your quirk works. If you're okay, that is.
Did you hear that correctly? Did Red Riot just ask?
You mean...
I'm open to a training sesh when this is all over,
he clarified while he shifted his body.
Maybe we can learn a bit more about how to strengthen our quirks and figure out a strategy, so that we don't end up like this.
He meant your current situation. That much you were certain. However, his offer piqued your interest. It was then that you realized that your blast did not affect him at all. You couldn't even recall if he was using his quirk while still against the wall. Even so, Red Riot had asked you to hang out with him, even if it was work-related. And the thought of working with him again thrilled you inside. Those butterflies returned in the pit of your stomach, intermingled with the stiff joints and the aftershock tremors. Now you really sounded like a fan. It wasn't long until the cries of police officers echoed around the room, muffled by the debris that both of you were trapped under until you were dug out.